Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Back on the outcome of that plan and let us know where we are tonight as we move forward this evening with a recommendation on an item on the agenda. With that, I'll turn it over to Rob Richardson, our Director of Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. With me tonight is Adam Rosa with Camiros Consulting Firm, and they've helped us with our community engagement, putting the plan together. I think the plan has been widely supported, and the community is very excited about it overall. We will have one minor amendment to present at the 7 o'clock meeting related to in the history section of the plan related to the exodusters that was overlooked at the Planning Commission meeting. But other than that, Adam has the presentation on the plan to go through how we got to where we are at the end of the process. With that, I'll turn it over to Adam to go through the PowerPoint.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Adam Rosa. I'm a principal with Camiros, and we are the urban planners that really facilitated this process over the last year or so. And they always say when you're starting a presentation, you should try to leave your audience with 3 main things to remember. So I'm going to give you 4 things. So I couldn't cut it down to 3. So this plan really represents a holistic vision that was created by the community that builds off of existing assets within the neighborhood. That's number 1. Number 2, it includes a future land use plan that recalibrates the neighborhood for future growth and change. That's 2. Number 3 is the plan includes specific priority projects that will help to achieve the community's vision, to really move it forward. And number 4, the plan includes an implementation structure led by the historic Northeast Midtown Association that's already taking action on a number of initiatives and projects. So as I go through the summary presentation, I'd like to kind of reflect on those 4 key points. Let's see here. Nope. I have to turn this on. Yep. There we go. All right, so since July, this previous summer, we've been going through and developing and refining the draft plan into what we have here today, which is really the final plan document. This included a community open house in July, a public comment period that lasted approximately a month, steering committee meeting to go through a summary of the plan and take feedback from our working group, our steering committee. Planning Commission review, which was October 8th, and then here today, November 28th, the Board of Commissioners. The area that the plan includes is really made up of a number of different neighborhoods of different character, as well as the Fairfax Industrial District. The boundaries are shown on the screen here, so it's really the Missouri River on the north and the east, down to Washington and State on the south, and over to I-635 on the west, also including the Quindaro Townsite area, just west of I-635. The vision that was developed through the process is really focused on 4 main planning themes, and all of the projects and actions in the plan are organized around these themes. This came directly out of the community engagement process that we undertook with residents. The first is a rich history, the second is a food hub, the third is a healthy community, and the 4th is an expanded economy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those as we go forward here, but I kind of wanted to lay that out right at the start in terms of the structure of the plan. Bringing all of those themes together results in the community vision. We have an illustration here on the screen that shows how all of these different pieces really interconnect and interlock to improve the quality of life for neighborhood residents, and also to help to identify catalytic improvements to the physical structure of the neighborhood. So all in all, I believe we have about 23 priority projects that are listed in the plan. We also have some smaller infrastructure improvements that we've also identified as part of the process, but the 23 projects, and they're kind of dotted around the screen here, are the ones that are really the highest priority for moving the neighborhood forward. We began with an assessment of the existing conditions in the neighborhood. We know we have about 21,000 residents living within that planning area. We know that it's a very diverse area, about 54% African American, 31% white, 31% Latino. It has, after a 10-year decline in population since 2007, there's been a 4.2% increase in the number of residents living within the neighborhood. So there is a growing population within the Northeast area. Although there is a median income is about $14,000 less than Wyandotte County as a whole. Unemployment is about 15%, which is higher than the county and higher than the national average. These are probably stats that you've heard before. It's good to identify these, but what we really wanted to do was build first on the assets of the community and working with the neighbors to really understand how we can really stress and build upon what's there today. The planning process is kind of a general outline of the process that we went through. Began in September of 2017. The first couple of months were really dedicated to listening and learning. We had a number of small group meetings, one-on-one conversations with stakeholders, our first larger community meetings, as well as our first steering committee meetings. We had a site tour with Mr. Chester Owens, who brought us around the neighborhood and told us about the history of the place and everything that had happened there, just trying to get the lay of the land. That moved into the visioning phase, which began in January 2018 and into February of 2018, where we looked at specific focus areas within this larger Northeast area and worked with the community to identify some different options for change within those areas. That led into the development of the strategies, programs, and projects, which began in March 2018 into June. Then from there, we developed the outline and the draft plan starting in June of 2018 into July. So it was really an iterative process. All the while, we were looking for opportunities to create action while we were doing the plan. That's the doing while planning, as well as creating community connections between different partners and members of the community that were interested in doing projects. So looking a little bit more at the assets and the challenges that were really told to us by the residents and the community, again, building off of the rich community assets that are already located and available within the neighborhood, including parks and churches, schools and daycares. Restaurants were identified as a major asset and something that was unique to the Northeast area. Community gardens, there's several community gardens and farms within the neighborhood. Recreation facilities, and really a large collection of historic assets, which is why one of our themes is really built on a rich history. Community facilities were identified by residents as being a really important asset and amenity, although many of the facilities residents felt could benefit from additional programming and investment, making better use of the spaces we have today within the neighborhood. In terms of challenges, some that really, we try to organize them around different categories, physical and economic and so forth. This grew out of our first couple community workshops, and a couple challenges that really stuck out were the poor sidewalk conditions, the infrastructure, thinking about being able to walk around the neighborhood safely. We know we have an aging population. We also have disabled residents, so that was a challenge that was identified. The fact that existing transit service may not connect residents to regional jobs and opportunities really stuck out to me as well. And we've been thinking about how we can put projects in place to make sure that residents that rely on transit can get out to where the jobs are within the county and elsewhere. In terms of economic challenges, I think from day one, we've heard everyone raise their hand and said, we need a grocery store. And again, I think this is something that everyone here has heard as well. We've been trying to be creative in how we address that challenge, both by connecting into the downtown grocery store project, as well as potentially trying to start a neighborhood grocery through a collaborative model or another approach that's kind of out of the box. Additional challenges, thinking about crime and security. Residents mentioned that the community, the trust between the community and the police department was something that was currently a challenge. Also, healthcare facilities are really lacking within the neighborhood. So that's one that we heard over and over again that I wanted to point out. So beginning to look at the vision as it was created through the process by the community, starting with a rich history. So these 4 different themes, you could think of them as layers of a cake. So they're not meant to be standalone. They really, they layer on top of each other to create the overall vision for the future of the Northeast area. So the rich history is really built upon really trying to connect to the strength, the culture, and the history and the heritage of the place for both improving the identity of the neighborhood, but also for economic development and for other opportunities in that direction. So some of the projects that were prioritized from a rich history, the Quindaro Town Site reinvestment, residents really feel that this is a critical place where we can create real change that would really put the Northeast on the map in terms of regional visitors, national visitors that are coming to the area that really want to learn about the unique history. So that was one of our key projects. And as we went through the plan, we looked for opportunities to bring action to some of these. And one of the things we did was we worked with the owners of the town site to apply for a new grant opportunity called the African American Cultural Heritage Fund through the National Trust. It was the first year this program was rolled out. I think they got way more applicants than they'd ever thought. Unfortunately, we didn't make the first cut, but I think that grant application could be remodeled and resubmitted in future years to continue to look for resources to bring positive change to the area. The Fairfax District Branding Initiative, I think, is very important, not only for the Northeast area, but for the Fairfax Industrial Association to really move the Fairfax area to the next level in terms of employer recruitment, the visual identity of the area, the gateways, making it more attractive and pleasing as a place to work. So that was one of the key projects. And of course, the vacant building reuse, really connecting this to the SOAR initiative, but looking for other opportunities for programs that potentially provide assistance to mitigate barriers to redevelopment of vacant properties. And we know we have about 20% of the properties within the Northeast area are currently vacant. So within the plan, each of the projects, each of the priority projects has a individual page like this that has a description of the project, potential partners that could be really help to lead the project, potential funding opportunities, whether they're local, state, or national, and then how we would evaluate the success of the project as we carried it forward. So we also have a number of illustrations and renderings to really try to provide an image to what we're talking about in the text. So this is a illustration of the Quindaro Town Site, how it could be improved, really turned into a community resource with trails and signage, landscaping. We've even heard about things like having camping programs and things at Quindaro. So we identified a number of projects and created illustrations for these to really reflect the importance of the projects. The food hub theme is focused on Number one, building off of the existing restaurants that were really identified as a community asset. Thinking about things like food industry training so that residents have the ability to work in places like Kellogg's that are in the Fairfax industrial area. The grocery store and all that entails, I think, was a real center point of the food hub concept, but also things like community gardens and trying to tie that together in a network of food production in the neighborhood. A couple of the high priority projects. The downtown grocery and community center, I think, is very important to residents. And in terms of this plan, the connectivity to that project and to that site will be incredibly important to make sure that residents can walk there, take the bus there. They're able to access it in a way that really ties the neighborhood together with that future amenity. The community gardens and farms, we talked about things like creating an online database and forum for the local farmers, trying to encourage greater energy efficiency within the farms through trying to bring different research methods to the local farms to uplift what they're doing today. And the Northeast Grocery Store, again, is kind of a supplemental grocery project where we've been exploring several models, including what they call a cooperative grocery store model, which would be a resident-owned grocery. And we're continuing to look at options for that. We've identified a location on Quindaro Boulevard that could be really a pilot project for this type of neighborhood grocery. And our implementation partner, HNMA, is helping to take the lead on moving forward on that initiative. A healthy community deals with a number of different things in terms of community health. So thinking about the medical side of health, but also the health impact of being able to walk and to be safe within your neighborhood, recreational amenities that are located within the neighborhood, the parks and the community spaces tied to community health. So some of the priority projects of that theme, the home repair program, so thinking about ways to incentivize repair in the homes. We actually have a pretty high, a pretty good number of homeowners versus renters within the neighborhood. I think it's 56% homeowners versus renters, which is about average for the county as a whole. A lot of neighborhoods that we work in are a lot more heavily skewed towards rental properties, but thinking about ways to help existing homeowners repair their homes, whether that could be pre-qualifying contractors within the neighborhood, working with local organizations like Youth Build that are already doing things within the neighborhood and helping to assist them to carry out and do even more. The Youth Build expansion, the model block program, was something that came out of this project as a catalytic idea. We know this is a really large geography, but if we can start in one location and create a model block where we help residents improve their homes, but also tie it to public infrastructure improvements, tie it to landscaping and beautification, that model block could then spread to the next block and then to the next block. So the ripple effect. Jersey Creek restoration, I think, is a real major opportunity for taking what isn't really a major community amenity today, but rethinking it in a way that making the creek an asset and an amenity, and thinking about how we can take what really is right now just intended to move water through the neighborhood and turning it into something that could be a beautiful place and tie the neighborhood together. So we really try to stress the Jersey Creek restoration within the plan. And the fourth and final theme is an expanded economy, because what good is all of this without jobs and education and training? And we know that we have a number of opportunities to connect to local anchors, especially at the Fairfax industrial area, where a very small number of Northeast residents currently are employed. So the expanded economy priority projects, the the top level projects, the Fairfax Job Training Program, I think that has a lot of support, and that could really happen through a partnership with KCK Community College, the Industrial Association, KCK Public Schools, and the local employers at Fairfax. We think that that's really a critical project to move the community forward. Improving access to job centers, whether it's sidewalks down to Fairfax or improved transit connections to the areas in the western part of the county where a lot of the local service jobs are today. That's going to be critical. Looking more at the land use of the neighborhood, so focused retail and service nodes. In the old days, Quindaro Boulevard and some of those streets had retail and commercial all along from one side to the other. We know that with the changing environment and the changing national environment of retail, need to be a lot more strategic about where commercial and service and retail uses should go within the neighborhood. We tried to lay that out in the future land use plan, but it's also about branding and marketing these specific areas within the neighborhood for future retail use. And building off of the publicly owned property that's located within these areas to really prepare it for future redevelopment. So then we move into the land use plan, which is really the kind of the nuts and bolts of the future changes within, recommended changes within the geography. And we've identified some different land use districts that are really built off of the community visioning process, and they're really intended to be flexible enough to allow for great change within positive changes to happen, but also to think about how we make sure that any future land use has a positive impact and not a negative impact on local residents. And this is an area that has a collection, it's mixed use in nature. There's industry, there's residential at various densities, and there's commercial uses. But we really wanted to make sure that everything was contextual, thinking about the future changes. So looking at the future land use map, we went through several iterations and provided 3 different alternatives to the community for their feedback at the last community meeting. And what it really boiled down to was the map that we have here on the screen. And there's really 5 main points to the changes that are proposed. The first is shifting industrial uses out of the center of the neighborhood, where they currently have a negative impact on local surrounding residential areas, especially along Parallel Parkway and 10th Street. So this is thinking about it over time, trying to recalibrate the area in the center of the neighborhood. The second is identifying appropriate areas for industrial expansion, really on the edges of Fairfax. Thinking about areas directly kind of south and west. I don't know if this will work. Yeah, there we go. This area in here and this area down here in terms of potential future light industrial expansion, but making sure that, especially in this area, that there will be design standards in place to make sure that those uses, again, don't have a negative impact on the nearby residential areas. The third is strengthening the historic and institutional resources of the neighborhood, the parks, the schools, the open spaces, and really trying to tie them into a network for the residents. The next is reinforcing the important commercial corridors and the nodes, which I talked about, especially areas along Quindaro, down in the southern part of the area, and some of the north-south streets. And the last major change was the preservation of single-family areas, which is really the light color here. That's really our future single-family land use color. The darker yellow is more of a medium dense or lower medium density, which could potentially allow townhomes and things like that, which seem to be more appropriate, closer to downtown KCK and closer to really the urban core. Transportation and infrastructure is another element of the plan, and I'm not going to go through all the recommendations, but some of the key points here: connecting people to jobs, priority safe routes to school, relocating excess right-of-way, I talked about Jersey Creek, improving the bicycle network within the neighborhood, Quindaro Boulevard improvements that really focus on kind of a complete streets approach to Quindaro, 18th Street, and then various road diet scenarios to make the neighborhood more walkable, bikeable, and safe. We have a full mobility report as part of the appendices of the plan. So last but not least, the plan is really geared towards implementation. And one of the things I'd love to hear today in terms of the conversation is how do we make sure that we are moving these projects forward? The structure that we set up was working with our local partner, HNMA, to be the implementation lead so that they were really with us every step of the way in developing the plan and then helping them to carry out the plan. And I think that's already started to pay dividends through the application for a groundwork trust as part of the neighborhood plan, as well as other grant applications that we have pursued and I think staff will continue to pursue, including choice neighborhoods and other programs like that. The plan also includes an implementation matrix that really lays out all of the 24 priority projects. I don't think I have it in here. Yep, there it is. And really just tries to outline it. Also includes a kind of a general priority level, a level of complexity that we think really ties to the project, an estimated cost for the particular project, and then potential lead partners, whether they're government, private, neighborhood, or community organizations. And what we said from day one is that this isn't a plan that Wyandotte County is going to just take and implement, that this needs to be done through local partnerships with neighborhood organizations, with all of the other partners within the community and with other organizations to really make this happen. But Wyandotte County you can take the lead in identifying and prioritizing the future growth of this area with this plan as a roadmap and a framework. So again, I just wanted to thank everyone for their participation, especially Commissioners Johnson, Bynum, and Townsend, who were at just about every meeting we had over the last year and a half. So I think from here, I'm going to pass it back over to Rob.
Thank you, Adam. Just a couple of additional notes. Adam mentioned HNMA a lot, and we wouldn't be where we are without the help of HNMA, especially Rachel and Eleanor Jefferson and their work in helping get the community out to the meetings and working with us to develop what we think will be effective strategies. The grant applications, I don't think, can be understated. They're very important. You know, the Groundworks Trust will infuse a lot of money into the neighborhood over the next 3 years if we're selected. We're currently the only one being evaluated, so we hope we'll be selected for that. And that's very exciting. It's a very competitive process. And it's an interesting neighborhood working with Fairfax at the same time we're working with the historic neighborhood and the community's overall need for more areas to grow industrially. And so Adam noted on the map areas we noted for expansion. And the plan also notes that if those areas go well, we might look for other areas that we could expand with those same types of development standards that help that be compatible with the existing neighborhood. I guess the last thing I'd like to do is thank Zach Flanders, our project manager on this. Zach really took this to heart. I mean, he produced postcards for all of the residents in this area for every meeting by himself, maybe with the help of some interns, but that is a pretty significant project all in its own, and that just shows the dedication he had to this. With that, we'd like to hear any comments that the commission might have.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, and Adam, thank you for your thorough work on this. This has been quite a project for all of us, and I'll save all my thank yous for later, but I do want to emphasize that it's been quite a process. It has shown us what our inherent weaknesses are and the things that we have to get done. But I'm very pleased with how this has turned out. I'm also pleased with the level of community input that we have witnessed. And it's what they said, it's been real, you know, they've given us good input, they've given us some that were not so easy to hear, but it was all necessary. And I think that this really sets us up for growth in this area, unlike we've never seen before. So again, thank you to Adam and to Rob and to Zach. I think, you know, it stretched us all in many ways. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. When I came into office about 5.5 years ago, I was immediately barraged with, why not this, and why aren't these houses selling, and this, that, and the other, and it became evident to me early on that this area needed a plan so we could see what we needed, where to go, grow, how to grow. I was particularly focused on economic development, but having this type of all-inclusive analysis done, and I agree with Commissioner Johnson. A couple of tears came to my eyes when I read through the plan, but it was necessary for us to know what we're looking at, what the community wants, and a roadmap for how to get there. So I hope that this is just the catalyst for implementation. And everybody can't do everything. There may be one or two things in particular that each person is more focused on. Like I said, economic development was the trigger for me. But this is a good roadmap when we want to invite others in possibly, or people who want to come in and look at our community. We know what the needs are and where to go. So I'm not gonna wait. I have to thank this commission, the previous mayor who helped get this funded, this commission who voted on it, this mayor who got on board with it, Mr. Rob Richardson's department, Mr. Zach Flanders, for all of the work that was done by that department, HNMA, all the people in the neighborhoods who came out to say, this is what we've got, this is what we want to see. And now it's moving forward to implement it. And again, thank you, Mr. Rosa, and all the people who worked with Camaros for this. Thank you.
Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. I probably am just repeating what the other two commissioners have said, but Adam and Rob and Zach, it was really clear to me that you had a lot of heart and soul in the effort. And as well as my fellow commissioners, we really were at almost every single event or meeting or conversation that took place, and because it was important. So I really appreciate all of the efforts, but in particular tonight here in our audience, we've got a number of folks from the neighborhoods in the area that have come, and so I want to say thank you to you for coming and being here. This is not the end, this is the beginning. It's really exciting to hear about and contemplate the things that are beginning to happen in the Northeast area. Now, some of this was evidenced on full display last week or the week prior at Commissioner Johnson's District 4 Summit. Many of those items brought forward that evening were directly related to this plan. And so there's real momentum, there's real caring, there's real interest. There always has been, I would add. It's always been a place deeply cared about by the people who live there. Now we've got a roadmap, and we got the roadmap because the community participated and told us what they would like to see for the future of this area. So I've been really pleased all the way through. I'm excited now to continue to build on what you've brought us. So just a big thank you to everybody involved. Thank you so much.
Yes, Commissioner Markley.
I was just going to say that I do think this format is an improvement over past master plans that we have done and received. I'm a little alarmed by how many of the projects need to be led by us, but I do think it's a more useful format. And I know Zach and Rob were at our standing committee this week talking about future master plans. I hope they look more like this than like the master plans of the past.
So do we.
Thank you for your comments and questions, and we have another item for the agenda.
So we wanted to also take a few minutes tonight just to update you on where we are with the zoning code rewrite. Just to review the process a little bit, we started last spring, really, and we've had a couple of, we've had one stakeholder meeting, we've had two stakeholder meetings so far, and we're going to have several more in the coming months. But we are at the point now where we're starting to see a more detailed outline of the draft of the code, and I wanted to show you what some of that is going to look like. We're not really ready to discuss specific features and provisions of the code, but we're trying to make, I'm starting out from the perspective of I want this to be usable. And so the first thing, we've done a lot of community feedback here, starting with some meetings. We had some pop-up meetings that different things were going on. We got a variety of responses. One of the top ones was walkability. People want to be able to walk and be out and be mobile. Dealing with parking issues, especially in some of our urban neighborhoods where we want new businesses, but we also need to be able to park in front of our, or near our houses anyway. Making the development process easier. Dealing with some of the issues like Airbnb, tiny homes, little free libraries, drinking establishments, some of our more common special use permit kind of things, and some of the new planning issues that are out there. So we've got a good list of things of areas people are concerned about that we'll be working through. Back to the steering committee, we've had two meetings. We have one in December, and then after the first of the year, we'll be meeting with the steering committee monthly. They've actually decided they want to meet more than what we had originally scheduled, which I think is great. They're engaging, and we're actually going to add the NBR presidents to that list as well. They're very involved in their neighborhoods. Our committee needed to be a little more diverse, and we think that will help that as well. As far as the process, we're trying to make, our process is really pretty efficient, but we want to find areas where we can make it move smoother, move faster, and have more things that are available to us by right than having to go through a formal process. I'm not sure what that's going to look like at the end of the day, because we have the state law to deal with as far as our process timing and newspaper advertisement, and we have to be able to do the work as well with a pretty small and efficient staff. So I want to talk about what the zoning districts and how this document is going to change and how I think it'll be more usable. So this is, if you pull up the code online now, this is what a zoning district looks like when you first start off. In the new code, this is more what you will see. You'll see a graphic that shows how you might do a development in this district. And you'll have a similar kind of graphic for every district that we have. I think you can just see intuitively this is friendlier, easier to discern. It gives you a graphic to show you what this might look like. Here's another one. These two are pretty close in similarities to what can be done there. They do have different names than what we're used to, and we're trying to categorize the names closer to what the neighborhood actually is, so that nobody knows what R1 means that hasn't been here, that hasn't developed here, but you might know what an established neighborhood or a general urban neighborhood might be.
Rob, I have to ask you, why is the house in the air?
Oh, it's so you can see the footprint underneath it to show, because that's the actual footprint of the house, and then each of these terms are defined. So A is if you look over here is the lot area, and then the setbacks are noted here, and so you see the different setbacks. It's just so if you had the house down here, you wouldn't be able to see the whole lot underneath it. We can work on that and try and make that more clear. So another issue that we have is definitions. Currently the code, I thought it had 30 because that's about all we deal with, but actually if you look at all the subcategories, there's somewhere around 100 definitions in the code. But we use hundreds of terms, not just 100. And any term that's not defined by code is left to me to define. I would prefer to have that set in policy by you all than by what I think you mean. And so we'll have a lot more definitions, and they'll be more clear as well. So you'll see, let's see where the definitions go. So on the definitions, this is kind of what the definition section looks like. In the future, if you're looking for something in residential, you look for the residential section, and it'll be more clear. On land uses, when you look into the districts, it tells you what uses are available there, but you have to go to each district to find that. In the future, we'll have a chart that has the districts across the top and the land uses down here. So if you're looking for a use and you want to know what district you can accomplish that use in, you can find it in this chart, and you don't have to look through every zone. I still have to look, if somebody wants to do something and it's allowed in C3, I have to look back to C2 to C1, and it takes a while to do that. It's not intuitive, and it's just hard to use, and if you weren't familiar with the code, you'd probably never figure it out. So that's kind of where we are with this, kind of the general kind of improvements we're making. We're going to be looking at a lot of different code provisions as we move forward and running through those in great detail with the steering committee. And we will probably need further study sessions. I know we will need further study sessions with you, probably like we do with the steering committee on a lot of these topics, and go through this in great detail. So I think over the next year, we're going to get real familiar with the new zoning code and where we're going, because I think it's important that all of us understand where we're headed, what those key provisions are, and how they affect our existing and our future neighborhoods.
Rob, if I could ask, so the zoning code rewrite, just for clarity, it's about making it a more efficient process?
Correct.
Making it, the language is more straightforward, so it's more accessible, easily accessible, more clear.
Correct.
By doing that, there should be less need to help someone, a developer, to navigate through, because the language will spell it out there. So
correct.
All right.
I think more than just the developers, some of our citizens and residents that interact with the zoning code, at some level, the developers are represented by attorneys that will figure it out for them, but even they need help sometimes. So it'll be more clear for everyone.
And then, so how much of the zoning code rewrite is really a response to changing conditions, that for instance, the desire for walkability?
There's a mix for the need. Part of it is our code was originally, I think, written in the 70s, had a significant amendment in the 80s, and has been cobbled together with other amendments since then. And so it's just hard to use, and it has some conflicting provisions. And when it got to the point where when I was frustrated with it, and I know it, that's a problem. And when the budgeting was available, and we've taken this project on, but we're taking this as an opportunity to address these things we've heard through our various planning processes, to address the zoning that will help implement our master plans, because a lot of what's in those master plans is specific development related. The plans are implemented through that future development to a large degree, and this is how we will help accomplish that, to make sure the zoning and the plans are engaged with each other appropriately.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Rob? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned, or close the meeting, so we can move to our special session for the sheriff's graduation.